Hello, and welcome to another edition of CJ's Corner. This is the place where we learn how to captivate and just engage and influence our audience through stories of different kinds. And today we're going to go through the second part of the Imagineering Pyramid, which we had started last week. So, what do you say we just get started? Right. So what we're doing here is that came up again. How about that? I'll do a quick review. Last week we were talking about with the Imagineering Pyramid. Now this is what the Imagineers at Walt Disney World do to create special spaces and places that tell a story. Spaces that as you walk into them you feel a certain way. You have thoughts and imaginations that spark inside of you, and it really helps you to kind of enter into an atmosphere and an understanding of where the overall story is going. You might not always be conscious of it, but you certainly are subconscious of it. So if you're wanting to make your office up a certain way, or your home, or whatever it might be, whatever kind of space you're dealing with, this is the way to do it, because they prove that it has worked. Now, we talked last week about the fact that it all begins with a story. So you have to have in your mind an idea of what it is that you want to be expressing to the people. The second step was the creative intent. You actually had to purposefully address what it is that that overall idea that you have and how you're going to approach it. Next, you had to look at the details that would bring out those nuances. Every room has a bunch of bigger items and medium-sized items and small items. So you got to look into the details of all of it and how it impacts people. Even the music, if there's music playing in the background. Then theming it, creating a theme where you basically set things up in a way where it's something familiar yet fully expressive. I talked a little bit about the lighthouse theme or the French cafe theme last week. It can be any kind of theme you want. Next, we were talking about the long shots, the medium shots, and the close shots. Now, in this case, you're not using a camera, but when you step into a room, you should be able to see things further away, some things close up, some things halfway. There should be kind of a depth to your design that people can understand and allow the flow to work. So that brings us up to date. Now let's jump forward into the start of today. Weenies. No, I'm not talking about the hot dog. Well, actually, when Walt Disney designed the Weenies, he was looking for something that was fun, something that would catch someone's eye, something that would bring flavor to the atmosphere. So he came up with the term Weenies. Cinderella's castle is a weenie. When you enter the Magic Kingdom, you see off in the distance this tall castle-like thing, and what it does is causes you to move toward it. That's what weenies do. It's a draw. It's something to say, hey, there's something interesting or creative up ahead. Let's move forward to see what that is. As you go to enter into Future World, you see Space Mountain. There's different things, Thunder Mountain over in Frontierland. There's different things in different areas where he set things up to draw you in. At Epcot Center, you see the big, giant golf ball, as people call it. The idea is that you want to have something of interest that stands out enough to cause people to enter into the room that you're working with. So that's the key of a weenie. All right, the next step is transitions. Now, again, a lot of this was designed by engineers as far as how, or Imagineers, as far as how they move people throughout the park at Disneyland. That was the origins of this. It's also true in Walt Disney World, several other parks across the world, and in a lot of other things. Keep in mind, Walt's design ideas all came from his understanding of movies, so a lot of these terms are all film-type terms. So transitions is no different. You know, you transition from one scene to the next scene. Some people like to use what's called a cross-dissolve, where you just kind of, this scene starts dissipating and this one starts coming in, and you have this wonderful dissolve that happens. You can't really do that with a place, or can you? For instance, a lot of times people have a living room attached to a dining room. Now, some people don't. Some have a hallway in between or an entryway in between. But let's say you have two rooms that are connected. One has theme A and one you might want to have theme B. How can you place things and design things in a way where it seems like as you move from one to the other room, it's not a stark, sudden transition like someone drew a line down the wall, but rather somehow it just seems to fit and gradually you're in the other theme. That's the key to the transitions, to see if you can pull that off or not. Okay, storyboards. Now, storyboards, you're like, wait a second, how does that work with spaces? Storyboards has always been how to conceptualize and put in order the different scenes to make up a sequence, to tell a story. So with talking about places, a storyboard you can look at kind of from an outline standpoint. Now, also keep in mind, even though I'm talking about all this based on physical space, believe it or not, everything I've been sharing, and maybe we'll go over this at the end of next week, but everything I've been sharing can also work for a business presentation. That's right. Believe it or not, you can storyboard out your business presentation. Maybe you want a hook for an opening. Maybe you want to get across these 3 points in this order with these subpoints that really strengthen your message. And then you want to close with a big climactic finale type thing with a little bit of a resolve to make sure they have their call to action. Well, same thing with the space, is that you want the people to be able to understand what they're moving into, and if there's some kind of a story there, you want to make sure it flows. So you can storyboard it out, the key elements that the people need to hit, when they hit them, that type of thing. So storyboarding can actually work for spaces as well. Okay, then we have the pre-shows and the post-shows. Now, this is an interesting thing. When you go to Walt Disney World, they purposely keep you out of the ride for a certain period of time because they want it to take you the entire day to see most of the park. Some people try to get through it all in 4 hours and then go off to the next park. But the place is designed to keep you at a certain pace. Now, if there's lots and lots and lots of people, you'll notice that the queue speeds up much faster on those days. But if there's hardly anyone at the park, you notice that it's a very lazy day as you move forward in line. So it is all timed out, it's well planned. But here's how they get away with it. They do what's called the pre-show, where as you're there, you're starting to understand the backstory of what it is you're about to see. Everything stylistically is bringing you into that era or that world. Everything combines in a way where the story actually starts before you ever get to the main attraction that you're going to. All planned out, all on purpose. That sometimes they have video things going on. That sometimes they have animatronics talking or joking about things. You're weaving in and out of artifacts from that time zone or that period or that theme that you're moving into. Sometimes you're even learning about this ride you're about to go on and how the assignment is up to you to save the planet, whatever it might be. Post-show is the same way. They do not, when you're done with the show, you do not suddenly walk out the door and now, oh, you're back to reality. No, that's too startling. So they want you to ease into it. As a result, you start seeing a few items and objects as you're walking out of the show that are very related or relatable to what you just experienced. And it usually, many times, not always, puts you into a retail area that is also designed in the same thematic tones. And the souvenirs are there so that you can peruse them and maybe buy something that reminds you of the experience you just had, or allows you to continue to stay within that environment just a little bit longer. You get the idea. You want to slowly wean the people off of the theme and the experience, just like you want to slowly warm them up to that experience. So pre-show and post-show is exactly what we're talking about. Now, I know a person that loved Christmas items and they like to really decorate their house. What they did that worked well is that when you first entered the house, you kind of saw a normal room with a few little Christmas items here and there. You heard the music. You smelled something coming from the other room that was a wonderful aroma, and you were just drawn in. Had they just had piles and piles of Santa Claus and snowmen and all kinds of stuff right as you entered, it would have been just shock to the system. And you would have been like, okay, these people are a little nutty. They have too much stuff. But it was subtle. But as you moved into the next room, the stuff seemed to double. But you didn't notice it as much because you were already being drawn in with the music and the aroma of the hot cider and the items. Instead of having a few little snowmen and snow scenes, all of a sudden you walk in and you see a landscape of snowmen doing things with sleds and Christmas trees. And you move the other direction and you see Santa Claus's workshop. And it just continued to build the further you went in. So as a result, when people went to leave, it did the exact opposite. It kind of weaned you off of their facility. It was a house. But anyway, you get the idea. You want to think pre-show and post-show after you know what your theme is. Now, forced perspective, this is an interesting one. When you walk down Main Street USA in Disneyland or Disney World, you'll notice that the buildings on each side of you are 3 stories tall. But in reality, they're not, because the first story is actually only 90% its official size. And the second story is 80% of its official size. And the third story, that too is smaller. Why do they do that? Well, they don't want you to feel crowded in that main street. And at the same time, they want you to experience the full 3-story effect. So to get rid of that sense of being crowded or overshadowed by the buildings, they made them smaller. And yet, you still had the 3 stories to give you the feel that you were actually in the streets. And as you looked up, you couldn't tell because those percentages were so small, made such a little difference that it just felt right. So they were able to play in that way. Now, forced perspective could also be you forcing people to look a certain way. More importantly, it's getting people to add to the story themselves. for instance, when you're looking at the building structures, your mind put into play that, no, that is a full story followed by a full story followed by a full story. I'm actually in a city. It wasn't, because your mind filled it in. So forced perspective allows the story to continue in areas where the person adds to the story with their own mind, and you don't have to worry about all those extra details. You've given enough hints and pointers, so to speak, that you were able to get the person to commit to the story in their mind, and they filled in the blanks where you weren't able to. So those are the 5 things today. Let's just review them again. Weenies, something to draw you in and draw you to move yourself forward to find out a little bit more information. Transitions don't have a shocking start and stop point between where you were and where you're headed. Have a transition in some way, shape, or form. Storyboards, basically outlining how you want the story to flow and the structure and what things add to that story. Then the pre-show and post-show, where you ease people in and ease people out of the story so the experience can take them out of reality and then slowly ease them back into reality. And then the last part was the forced perspective. Now, next week we're going to talk about the last 5 items, and then I'll talk a little bit more about how the whole thing can fit together, not only for the theme of a place, but also how you can get it to work within a business presentation. All right, well, that's it for today. Thank you very much for being a part of today's show. We'll see you later.